In this video, we're installing this life-proof vinyl flooring.
Good morning and welcome back to our off-grid homestead we're building from scratch in North Idaho. We started off living in tents right over here, and then we have been building our home from scratch by ourselves. If you want to go back to the very beginning, I've got a playlist down below that you can check out. Clearing the land and all of that is down there. Well guys, let's get to work today and start installing this flooring.
Finally found a little oasis off the map. No reservations, got this chance. Might as well take it. Oh, let's go. Anywhere, no destination. This whole world, ours for the taking. Brand new life out there just waiting. Oh, let's go.
One of the first things we learned about putting this flooring down is to make sure that your floor is prepared well to receive it. Check this out. So as you can see, this is an OSB floor, and it's pretty good, but if we go right here, you'll notice there is a hump right here at this seam. So what we want to do is go over it with the belt sander, hit all of the seams really good to get any humps out of it, and then just go over the whole floor to make sure if there's anything sticking up, we're gonna hit it with that belt sander and knock it down. We're also gonna be using some earplugs because it's super loud. You got the belt sander going and the shop vac. We put the shop vac in here. Really reduces a lot of the dust that's gonna be in the room that we're gonna have to sweep and vacuum up later. Let's give it a try.
For every day that the world makes us feel like giving up, we'll make our own luck. Every day, our own adventure, you and me, one perfect picture. I'm on.
All right, so we sanded this down here pretty well. Put the level back on there. It's good, right? We got it a lot flatter there. We're going over the seams. Basically, we're going over them until it's sanding on both sides of the seam when you're holding it flat on there. So we found that it's easiest to start in a corner like this. Some say it's the left corner. I guess that just depends on which side of the room you're on. But to start in the corner so that you have this edge up on two sides like this. This is kind of like the proper way to install it. Although, as you're gonna see, as we're installing this flooring, we're gonna have to go backwards sometimes because we're trying to do the whole apartment without any like hard seams and doorways and stuff like that. So, I wanna put it in here. What did they say, Jules?
1/4 inch.
1/4 inch, all right.
We're gonna be using these blue spacers here. This side is the 1/4 inch and then this side is a 1/2 inch. And we're going to be using the 1/4 inch, putting it up against the wall. These are included in a kit that we bought with a few other tools that we'll show you how to use them later, but it came with all of these. So we'll just put a few.
Slide it up against there so that it holds it tight. There we go. So now these spacers here, right, are going to hold this 1/4 inch off of the wall. And then your baseboard, we could just use this as an example for the baseboard. Right? The baseboard will go up there and it will cover up any space you have here. Here's a little pro tip they don't tell you. If you look under here, the sheetrock is a 1/2 inch thick. So there's a 1/2 inch space underneath the sheetrock before you get to the sill plate. Do you need these? Most of the time, yes. But not always, because there's also a big gap. So actually, we have a 3/4 inch space because we're 1/4 inch off the sheetrock and then a 1/2 inch off of that base plate that's down there.
But this is considered a floating floor, which means it should be able to move. So the spacers really come in handy for the actual installation process, so your floor isn't constantly moving around on you.
Because part of the process is using this hammer and beating the floor into place. And so as you do that, it keeps wanting to move the floor little by little. So these spacers then keep it from sliding this way as you're hitting it, because it's hitting up against the spacer, which is hitting up against the wall, and then your floor can't keep sliding this way as you're building it out away from the wall.
Today, this time, choosing the state of my mind, yeah. now. It sinks into your bones like a potion for your soul. Before you know it, you're gold, I'm gold.
So we chose to go with Frogtown Valley Walnut. That's the color of the life proof that we chose. One thing that we learned the hard way is that when you're opening the box, you need to be careful not to slam the pieces down on the ground, because sometimes they stick in there and then release really quickly, and you can break this mechanism here pretty easily. If this breaks off, this pretty much becomes an unusable piece, except on the other side. If you have to cut it, you could use this side, but this will break off and your planks won't walk together anymore, and you might as well just throw it away. Here's actually a good example of a piece that we broke, and as you can see, this is really flexible now, and this part actually is broken off altogether. So we can't use this end.
Cry home again when the road winds around the bend. I'm never too far, never too far. When you lost faith, when you feel the dark, you wanna catch fire, I'll be a spark. And in your hands, your head in your heart. Never too far, never too far. Never too far, never too far, never too far, never too far.
So we are trying to get this whole apartment done with no like hard seams, right? All one solid piece of flooring. And when you do that, sometimes you have to break the life-proof rules, like this example right here. So we came out of the other bedroom into the hallway, and now we're coming into this bedroom here, which means we're gonna start actually going backwards with the flooring, and we have this little strip here that we have to deal with, which actually kind of goes against the official life-proof rules, but that's the way it has to be if we want to get the whole floor all one like solid piece with no hard seams. So this might be helpful to you as a tip. If you're trying to do the same thing with your flooring, this is how we're gonna do it. All right, so we're gonna just pop our spacers in here again, and then we're gonna slide this full piece in here. It's gonna go up and underneath. Okay, now I can use this as a guide because it's holding it straight right where it needs to go. And so that we can measure here how much we need. We need 1.5 inches. And then down here, because our house isn't perfectly square, it's probably different than 1.5 inches. 1 5/8 inches. All right, so now we need to take this piece that we've got right here and almost waste it probably. We need to cut 1 5/8 inches off that side right there. 1.5 inches and 1 5/8 inches. Straight line and cut it. So for ripping these down, the lengthwise of it, we found that the skill saw works pretty good for that. You may be able to score it and break it, as we'll show you how to do that later, but we found that the skill saw works pretty good for that. This is one of the times that I really appreciate the safety glasses, because it just seems to fling sharp little pieces of plastic right into your eyes. Like, you can't avoid it. All of these tips that we're telling you is because we learned either the easy or the hard way. And here is a tip that we are learning the hard way right now. See this beautiful piece we just cut off? See how it fits beautifully right in this little slot here? We cut the wrong side, man. So this piece right here is not usable. It's probably wasted, but hopefully we can use it on the other side of the room when we need to go up against that wall over there. We can cut the right side off of the piece we just cut. And so this right here is probably scrap, but maybe, just maybe, we'll be able to use it later.
It's recommended that you buy 10%, isn't it 10%?
10 to 20%.
10 to 20% extra than you think you're gonna use. And it's a really good idea to do that because there's a lot of pieces that need to be cut.
That's right, and some of it gets wasted, as you just saw. All right, let's try it again. Line it up here. So to continue this out, just in case the wall's not really square, see how easy this moves back and forth? We're gonna go ahead and start the second row and get it down here to kind of hold this in place where it needs to be so that we can measure on down and get it accurate so we don't accidentally end up with too big of a gap here that your baseboard is not gonna fill. So we got our little strip all the way down here to this wall. Now we're using the full-size strips here, and we need to measure around this guy because it's gonna fit in there. All right, so we measure to here, give a little space around there, mark to here. Then we need to measure how far this needs to be cut out around here. So we just measure from this piece right here to there, 1 inch. 1 inch exactly ought to do it. No, so we got our little box cut out right here, or our little box marked out, I should say. And the easiest way that we found to cut something out like this is with the jig saw. So let's get it cut out and see if we got it to fit or if we made another mistake. All the other days that we've been working on the floor, it was not raining. But today, when we decided to film how we did all of this, it's raining, of course. But
Somebody wants it.
we're cutting it all outside because it kind of makes a big mess, and that way we just keep the mess out there. We can sweep it up, and we don't get it all over our brand new floor.
Tox, come in this way.
Let's go see if it fits. All right, so we've got a little bit of a space here, which is not actually necessary because it can slide under the sheetrock. Then along here, it's actually under the sheetrock, but still has a 1/4 inch space under here. And over here, we do have a little bit of a gap, but it's still 1/4 inch. So all that is going to fit fine. Go ahead, pound it in, and then we'll get a little strip for this right here and a small piece for the end. Not ideal to have such a small piece down there, but that's the way it's turning out. And then we can like go through this thing and start actually moving some flooring and getting it down. And we'll show you a really easy way to cut it when you're just normally cutting it to length. We've got our full width piece coming all the way down, almost to the wall right here, right? So we got this space that we need to. You could use a tape measure and you can measure and cut it, but a super simple way, this would be going in like this, is just to flip this around backwards. And then you're gonna line it up to where you want it, how close to the wall. Ideally use a spacer it, and then you just mark it right here where you need to cut it. Then you're gonna look and see where the wood grain starts right there. You're just gonna mark it and we'll cut it right there. So then, right, we'll just make double check. This is gonna go underneath there and this end is gonna clip onto there. So we're cutting it here. This is the piece that we need right here, not that end. But we'll use this end down at the other end to start the next row. So all you need is a razor knife. We're using a cheap one from the dollar store. And put your square on there, line it up with your mark, and score it. The more times you score it, the easier it is to break. So we're gonna do it a few times here just to show you kind of like the goal to make it relatively easy. You don't have to do it that many times, but when you do, take a look right here. See right here how we cut through pretty much all of this top layer, which will make it a little bit easier to break.
Only a little bit though.
Only a little bit though. It does take some strength though. Jules can do it, right? You've been doing it.
Yeah, I can do it, but I usually use my foot.
All right, so here we go. Ready? You just take your knife and you just cut this backing like that. I'm gonna put this piece in here right now. And like I said, remember this room we're actually installing backwards. So it's sliding down underneath. Did you see that? I was hitting it and I didn't have the spacer there, so it moved the whole floor. Put our spacer back in there. There we go. And it'll do that like across the whole room. Like if you have almost the whole floor down and then you're working on it but you don't have those spacers there, it'll move the whole floor.
We're gonna take this piece that Marty just cut off and go start our next row over here. And like Marty said, we're actually putting this one in backwards. As you'll notice on the back of these, it's black and this is like a squishy foam part. You don't need an extra underlayment. This acts as your underlayment. All right, so we're gonna slide this under.
Why are you putting it up against the wall instead of using a spacer?
Because that's how you did the rest of them.
Why did I do it that way?
I don't know why you did that.
I did it that way because there's a 1/2 inch of space underneath the sheetrock until you get to that bottom plate of the 2x4 wall. And so you don't need that 1/4 inch space off of the sheetrock here. And it just makes for sure, 100% certain that your baseboard is actually going to cover that gap because the gap is super small, right? Like that. There's still a 1/2 inch space before that's gonna hit anything under there. And so you want that space so that when the flooring expands and contracts with temperature, it has enough space to actually move a little bit and it's not like held tight in there and then it'll buckle if you don't have that extra space. We have that extra space, you just can't see it.
These are a couple of, I think, mandatory tools that you have. And this hammer has 2 different heads on it. This is for going between the boards on this seam. It's like rubber. This one is for locking them together on like the long seam. Let me show you. So you take this guy, which I accidentally broke already, but it has a lip on both edges. So take that and put it up against the edge of this board. And with this side of your hammer, you tap it in. And when you do that, it closes this seam, locks it together. So see right here, you can't see really any line at all. Mm-hmm. But go over here and you see that? I can stick my fingernail in it.
Yep. Yep, I saw it.
Now there's no seam. So now these 2 are locked together. Another really vital tip that we learned is to clean out the tracks in all of them. I'm calling them tracks, I don't know if that's what they're called, but whatever these are called that makes them lock together, make sure that there's no debris in here. And so we pretty much just blow on them to make sure that everything's clean. And then we'll want to clean this one down here as well. Otherwise, any little thing that you get in there is going to prevent it from actually making a strong lock. We've seen people use like paintbrushes and stuff that you could also just brush it out, but it's easy for us to just go along and blow them out. So for this seam, which is the short seam, we're going to use the rubber side. And you got to hit it pretty good. Something that's actually really cool about these is if you do it right, you can hear them clicking together.
So Jules has got marking the end one here. And she's gonna show you that anybody can cut it, huh?
It's pretty awful, actually. Yeah, some videos make this part look super easy.
Right, but it's not the easiest thing to break.
Yeah, it's not that easy to score either.
It was a few days ago now, but I sliced a nice little slice right off of my finger there. It was bleeding, but it's pretty much healed now. But
Yeah.
Show them what I did, man. But don't do it, but show them.
What, did you have your hand like that?
Yeah.
You're right-handed, so...
Yeah, but I had my finger hanging over the edge like that. Yep.
And I almost did that with my thumb, because I had my thumb pressed down like that, and I almost went like that.
So we don't want to do that.
It's dangerous.
Another tip on cutting these is if you go light with your first cut, it'll put a little track in there, and then you can push harder on your second and third and fourth cut with it. Otherwise, sometimes, like I found that if I pushed really hard the first time, if I had a little bit of an angle on the blade, it would go off and it wouldn't cut right along the straight edge. So anyway, that's another tip.
What do you think?
Yeah.
It's good?
Yeah.
All right, so I like to notice where I've cut it and then kind of set it down and then step on it. Ready?
Yep.
And then just like Marty said, cut the back in. This is the one we want. This one we'll take to the other side and start down there, the next row. Clean out our track. Put her in there. We don't need our spacer anymore because we already cut it to size. We've learned to double, triple check everything and each other's work, because if you make a mistake, it's really hard to go back to your mistake without breaking any of the ones you've already laid down. Agreed?
Yeah. Yeah, and the part that typically gets broken when you're trying to take them back apart is this little end right here. And that's the same spot that Julie showed you we were breaking when we were taking them out of the box, like dumping them out of the box. That's the same little spot that we were breaking when we were taking them apart to fix another mistake, which then caused other mistakes, and you don't want to have to take it apart.
So now we need to decide where we want our next seam. If we use this one, then we'll have overlap of this much. Or if we use this one, then our seam is only here.
We could use a full one too.
Or we use a full one and it'll put it even further down.
Why don't we use a full one?
Okay.
For this one.
Yeah, so our seam will be way down here. That'll be better.
Waking up, what a view, it's just you and me.
If you've been watching the news like us, you know that now is the time to get prepared. And we created a preparedness checklist for ourselves, but we want to give it to you totally for free. There is a link down in the description below, or you can scan the QR code right here. Just open your camera app on your smartphone and point it at that guy, and then you can go and get it right on your phone. It's a checklist that you can use to get yourself prepared. Print it out, stick it on your fridge, and as you go through the list and you get your preps together, just check them off and you'll be prepared for some of the things that might be coming down the road. Well, we hope those tips were helpful to you, and if you've ever installed this flooring before and you have some tips that you want to share with everybody, make sure you put your tips down in the comments below. If you want to start off at the beginning from as clearing the land, we've got this video right here for you. It takes you all the way back to the beginning, or we picked out this video right here for you to go ahead and watch next. We hope you have a really great day and keep smiling.